Hey guys, welcome to a new episode of FemFlex Friday. Today I'm here with, of course, my co-host Lena Murray, but we have Dr. Ryan Crandall, who's a chiropractor doctor. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
And what we wanted to bring to you today were the misalignments and the ailments that can happen to your body from a chiropractor perspective, as we are athletes, as powerlifters or weightlifters or bodybuilders. As I know, Dr. Ryan, you have experience with some of these athletes. So I just wanted to get your perspective on how can weightlifting impact our posture or the functionality of our bodies.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on. This is going to be fun. Yeah, I am trained as a chiropractor, so that's what my license is in, but a lot of my patients who come in don't really know what I do. So I kind of like it that way. I think the two worlds of strength and conditioning and rehab are blending together. So having a keen understanding of how the body moves, but also how to rehab it, is kind of what I do. I don't adjust every patient that walks in my door.
Oh yeah, you never adjust me.
I do a lot of rehab exercise. And like you said, I see athletes, I see everyday people, weekend warriors, bodybuilders, pro athletes, little kids who are competing in athletics. And there are some things that are similar between everybody. There's just some general biology stuff that every human has that we can't get over. But then there are, what does your sport require you to do? You know, like bodybuilding is a sport that, you know, it requires you to get into certain positions, and you need a certain amount of range of motion to get into those positions, but you also don't want to give up your size. And that's where the rubber hits the road, you know, and you kind of got to sacrifice one to get the other.
Because sometimes, obviously, the size can stay in the way of your movement, right? The fluidity of your functionality, the movement, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if we look at the human body as just almost like a bag of fluid, your muscles are fluid, water makes up the majority of your body. Water's incompressible, which means when you try to compress it, it just pushes to the other side. But when you get so much compression around water and it has nowhere to go, then we start to see a lack of range of motion. Joints start to not move. You're overcompressed, and now you're stuck in a position you can't get out of.
So you mean when I have all those pains, it's just water?
Yeah, it's just it's more of like an inability to expand.
I understand.
And so we have to be able to compress and expand and move back and forth between movement variability. And when we lose that variability is usually when pain sets in, or we create an injury, because if we have this massive space to move in, and that space gets smaller and smaller and smaller, our body can't compensate anymore to create a new movement, leads to injury, or you know, you just stop moving and you're stuck in one position. So I deal with a lot of that kind of stuff.
So what made you decide, as we said before, I mean, I have chiropractors that I was there in and out, 5 minutes. Like, they put me on a table, they crack something. Sometimes it was painful, sometimes it was not. Sometimes it would release something or just aggravate the problem. What made you go in this direction? Because when I met Dr. Ryan, I told him that I think that he's an intuitive. That's how I felt. Like the way he just goes with his energy and feels the body and what needs to be adjusted is absolutely amazing. So I want to know what made you decide to go more in this functionality and recovery and everything you're doing, rather than just cracking somebody and sending them in their merry way.
I was very fortunate in chiropractic school to be surrounded by a good group of guys. My mentor opened up a bunch of windows for me, and me and all my buddies in chiropractic school, we would talk about different rehab techniques or what seminar we were taking that weekend. And I learned early on that, you know, simply adjusting somebody wasn't going to get the job done. And like I talked about earlier, bridging that gap between all of these things, like you have to, adjusting is one tool
It's almost like getting medicine instead of treating the condition, right?
Yeah, so it's a tool, but if you don't take care of the root cause, you know, like we've talked about, you know, if you can't expand into your back, cool, I can lay you on your back and I can adjust your mid-back, and then you go sit at your desk like this and create a ton of compression, or you go in the gym and put a barbell on your back and create a ton of compression, then the next week you come back, you're just gonna say, man, my back is still stiff, like it's not helping. And so I saw that it had to be more than just an adjustment that people needed to get, so I kind of went down this functional path, and I am still learning stuff to this day and trying to figure out how I can make my patients better, and yeah, it's fun.
So as far as like the percentage, or as far as like doctors that have that knowledge, and like we were saying, being intuitive and functioning and really understanding like what athletes go through, understanding what a bodybuilder does, whether it's squats or a golfer with his swing. So you take the two and you combine them in a sense. You have that foundation or that background.
Yeah, so really, I mean, everything can be broken down into walking, right? So we spend our entire first year of our life learning how to walk. And so human movement is just walking. It just depends on what you're doing, right? So if you look at somebody, you put a barbell on their back, and they're standing in that position, that'd be more like in a later stage of the gait cycle. So you want to see certain things while they're doing that. And as they go down into the squat, you need to create more force. And so you want to see some things with that. And so, yeah, just being able to look at human movement with more of a broader lens. Like I think a lot of people try to zone in on one thing, like, oh, it's your foot. Like I know it's your foot.
Right.
And it's like, well, what if it's not, like, what if the foot's not driving the train?
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
More of a broad lens is what I look at it, and then I kind of hone in on.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to take the opportunity to jump in.
Yes.
Because I just had, it'll be 1 year where I had double knee replacement, right? And what I'm noticing now, because I'm almost at that year mark, I don't know, like my walk or something changed, but I feel some things in my back. Like I feel things in other places. I'm like, okay, I got the knees fixed, and now I got to deal with this other thing going on. So what should one, because you were talking about walking. And I'm just like, I have new legs, new knees. So it's almost like I had to learn how to, I don't know, walk again? Or?
I guess it's pretty much that.
With any replacement, so I have a lot of people who come in with hip replacements or shoulder replacements, and the first thing I have to tell them is, this is not your hip or shoulder anymore. Like this is not a bone. This is metal. And what we know from bones is that if you watch somebody move on a high-speed camera, like a track athlete, right? You watch them run, their bones actually twist and turn, bend, while they're moving.
Okay.
So we know that as we're moving, we're getting twisting and turning. What doesn't twist and turn is metal.
Okay.
Right, so the minute that metal's put in there, everything changes, right? And so there has to be some sort of a compensation strategy in order to get you to move forward. And so that's the biggest thing with that, is it's not bone anymore. And so doing some stuff to kind of
just
I know
go around that.
Yeah, that's the first time I heard that.
I know we're going to look at that today, so that'll be fun.
Well, I think we should go have some demo, right? We got a table here, and I want you to get your hands on us and kind of like explain to our people, our followers, right, what's happening in our bodies. We are both lifters, as we were saying, so we can exemplify the theory with the practice.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
So here we are, guys, with the demonstration part of this interview with Dr. Ryan Crandall.
3 weeks ago, I woke up one morning with one of those things when you can't turn your head or twist it or tilt it, or it's like in Romania we say that you turn your whole body like a wall, right? Because you can turn your head. So I woke up, but it was terrible to the point like I couldn't hold my head. Like holding my head and sitting at a desk was horrible. So I hated my life. So I ended up on his table, and he's gonna show you what he did to me, and he's gonna tell you his conclusions, right?
Yep.
So how do you want me to lay on this?
Let's just have you lay on your back. That's where we started when you came in.
You want my head here?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, face up.
Perfect. Yes. Yes.
There we go. Get out your way.
So when we're dealing with neck issues, we also have to think about the scapula and how the neck and everything interacts with the shoulder. So knowing that Alina was a bodybuilder at a very competitive level, I know that she has to stand in a certain posture. She works out in a certain posture. So I kind of knew what I was looking at before she got on the table. So the first thing that I look at personally is, can this person breathe properly? I do a lot of diaphragmatic function, diaphragmatic breathing. If you can't use your diaphragm properly, you really can't do anything properly. So I like to watch people breathe and kind of see what's going on, but all that stuff's boring, so we can skip that and move straight to the shoulder neck area. So forget about straight planes and everything. Every joint kind of moves in a circle, and our body's just kind of made up of repeating systems. So when I'm looking at Alina here, and we're checking normal shoulder flexion, or true shoulder flexion is what we call it, where the elbow and wrist have to stay in line and we have to go overhead. She can only get to about here, but as you can see, she can get all the way overhead if she wants to. So we know that she's cheating, finding space somewhere else so she can get her arm overhead. And what this tells me that she's stopping at about this point is that she doesn't expand very well into her back. Lats is usually what I'm looking at there, and being a bodybuilder, lats are everything to you. You want those big lats and be able to flare those lats.
Yes.
And so just by looking at this, we know that she's kind of taken her scapula, turned it out. So instead of pointing forward, it now points a little out. And so in order for her to get her arm overhead, she has to bring her arm all the way out here and then go up. So that was the first thing that we kind of found. And then I just go straight into internal, external rotation. So for external rotation, she's a little limited going back into external rotation, and then internal rotation, also a limitation. So with external rotation, we're looking at the exact same thing, posterior expansion, and with internal rotation, we're looking at the ability to expand kind of up into the upper chest here. And since she can't get into full shoulder flexion, and I know that she's using some sort of respiratory muscle. Me and her had a conversation earlier when we were talking about this, and with bodybuilders, it's almost like you want to be in this proud chest position, stick your chest out, pull your shoulder blades together, and you kind of get stuck in this position after a long time.
We always hear chest up, chest up, chest up.
And what that does is it's almost like it traps air in your lungs, so you don't get a full exhale, and you almost have dead air sitting inside your lungs, and that restricts movement for sure. And so the first thing that we did with you is we brought your feet up, and we just got you to do some long exhales to try to force air out of the breath, out of the upper chest, and bring the ribs down so that we can get more equal expansion throughout the rib cage and abdominal wall. And with the neck not being able to go all the way up there, we know that she has to compensate somehow to get that shoulder up there. And so what that is that's a turn of the neck. So I can turn my neck, and then it appears as if I get my shoulder higher. So how I explain it to patients is, if this is all I have in external rotation, I can lean back, and it sure looks like I got more external rotation, but my shoulder didn't actually move. So I'm trying to cheat the system somehow, and you want to lift heavy stuff, you want to lift overhead, and so you're going to do it any way you can. And the human body's amazing. You can compensate a million ways, but then eventually you hit a block where your body's done compensating. And so that's kind of what we ran into here. So some real simple things that we did with Alina was one, we really wanted to get her upper anterior ribs to be able to expand so that she could capture more internal rotation. And so we started with just a basic kind of hook lying position, and I just had her hands here and here, and all I wanted her to do was just take a nice breath in, and as she breathes out, just reach a little towards her knees, and her ribs drop, and then her next breath in, she's able to create a little more expansion into her back there, so that's putting a stretch on the lat. And as she goes through 3 or 4 breaths here, we're noticing that her ribs are dropping. She almost feels like she wants to tuck her pelvis underneath her and get out of an anterior orientation. And this is very parasympathetic and relaxing to the body to go through full exhalation. So for people who live in a world of kind of sympathetic overdrive, of constantly being under tension, this is a nice little reset to do after working out to kind of let your body relax. It's very good for your low back. You can feel your low back expanding.
Yeah.
So just in that instance, if we come back and she was hitting at about 90 degrees of flexion, so now we can get higher without her arm wanting to turn out on me here. But we can't quite get that full shoulder flexion overhead, and that's where the neck issue comes into play here. And we just, after everything I do, I'm just assessing, like, did this make something better? Did it make it worse? Unfortunately, I tell all my patients it's a trial of care for a reason. So you try something, and if it doesn't work, the patient doesn't know it doesn't work, but I know it doesn't work. So, you know, you just kind of are constantly evolving and seeing what'll work, what won't work. So with this, we were able to get a little higher in shoulder flexion. We're still missing a little bit of internal rotation. But we're going to go straight towards the neck because I know that's where you're experiencing the majority of your issues.
Yes.
So
I actually felt it right now as you made me breathe like that.
Yep.
When I was like really exhaling, I could feel it pulling here on the side.
Mm-hmm. And so with trying to get full shoulder flexion overhead, we need a cervical spine that can rotate. And so if we're going overhead here, we need a spine that can rotate to the right. And so what I do is I just block air. So we know that you got massive upper traps, which is a great thing for your sport, but you know, it doesn't really allow too much movement up here in the chest wall. So all I do is I just block and kind of hold her shoulder blade, rotate towards that side, and then again, like, everything can be done with breath. So go ahead and just breathe in for me. And as she breathes out, I just kind of guide the shoulder blade down. And now I'm not going to let that shoulder blade move as she breathes in. So if you can see on her anterior chest wall, the front of her chest wall, the more that she breathes in, the more that we're starting to see expansion in that area. And so that's going to help us get a little more shoulder movement. It's also going to help open up her neck range of motion a little bit. Yeah, perfect. Mm-hmm. So it's all pretty simple stuff.
I see. And so this is a movement. You'd send her home and she'd have to practice this.
Yeah. So I always, in the world of bodybuilding, in the world of powerlifting and CrossFit, whatever you're doing, you just have to make sure that you maintain movement variability. So we know that, you know, she was losing some movement variability because she was losing range of motion, and we want to restore that range of motion back to her so that her brain has more options and ways to move.
Okay.
So if we just go back and we'll check this here, and now we can go almost fully overhead without getting compensation. So
and you didn't even have to take her, pull her neck, crack her, or anything.
Stretching.
Yeah, so
I know, but that's what I think most people think. Like, you're gonna go and just like,
yeah. Like in the instance of
like bodybuilders or powerlifters, you know, like there's so much compression in the system that, you know, and muscles are so tight that if, you know, you said earlier you've been to chiropractors and they adjust you and it hurts, you know,
Yes.
like it's, your muscles are so tight, they have to be able to relax somewhat. And yeah, if you can get something to adjust well, then, you know, you kind of get the muscles to relax. But yeah, in this instance, it's all just getting some stuff to expand that's been compressed for a long period of time.
I know. I was really shocked when I got there that you made me breathe so much. Like all I did was like breathing and breathing and breathing.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool.
I know, right?
But I'm really curious to see what you can do to
Yeah.
Linda.
You know what? So here's my big question. That's been not plaguing me, but I just kind of assessed myself. And I said, here it is. I had all this muscle, right? In my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. And like now what I'm noticing, it's like I wondered, I'm like, okay, I don't have that same level of muscularity in my back, that same. So what's happened to my body? Because it seems like I have to train my back so that I don't like have, I don't know if I'm saying, but like pain. I get really rickety.
Yeah.
So did something happen? What's the consequences of a person putting on that much muscle and one day you just got to come to the realization that I can't walk around with that same back development?
Yeah, it's a, that's why I think bodybuilding interests me a ton, and bodybuilding athletes, because like in terms of human movement, you kind of give up the movement aspect of it for almost aesthetically pleasing and looking a certain way, which that's the sport, right? You know, like if an elite level sprinter came in here with a huge anterior pelvic tilt and back pain, I'd be like, I can't take you out of that. You need it for your sport, right? So for bodybuilding, you need certain things for bodybuilding, but you also have to, there's consequences to everything, right? And so you take something to too far of an extreme, and like we talked about in the intro, is we work on this fluid gradient, right? And just think like if your muscles are constantly under tension and concentric activity, and just you're losing blood flow to those muscles, right? And so you're not getting oxygen into those muscles, and they become weaker in a sense. You get dull, aching pain.
Yes.
And that's more what a dull ache pain is right? It's like oxygen isn't getting to the muscle. You got sodium, potassium pumps that aren't working. And so now you get this pain signal. And so it's regaining movement variability.
Yeah, so that's basically what I'm going through, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been going through it for a while, but I said, wow, there has to be, you know, I paid a price for that level of muscularity. I was always really pretty good at stretching, but it's just, I can feel, I know there's a shift that's taking place. Yeah. And so how do I like dance into my 60s and be able to, you know, survive all that I did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, 50s.
And I think, like you made a good point for people who are coming up in the bodybuilding world, right, is maybe throwing in some accessory exercises where you do some other kind of stuff instead of just lift repetitively over and over again and create all this compression. But maybe you have a day or two where you only do like single arm, or maybe you only do single leg stuff. And you can start to create some turns in your body instead of, you know, a lot of us, we go to the gym and we lock ourselves into one plane, you know, the sagittal plane, and we're doing bending movements, we're doing back squats, we're doing rows, and that's, you know, we'll look at your pelvis and kind of see like how we can help you out.
Yes.
So you had both knees replaced about a year ago, so we talked about that a little bit, and then you mentioned that your low back is kind of starting to bother you a little bit.
Yes, it definitely is, especially the last 2 days I felt something. So, yes.
So we're going to go through pretty much the same assessment. So areas of the body mirror each other, so it wouldn't matter, you know, on Alina, if I measured her hip or her shoulder, if she was missing external rotation in her hip, she'd be missing it in the same shoulder. So it doesn't really matter which way we go. We'll go with the leg. So I like to start off with a nice straight leg raise. And this is about it.
Okay.
You probably stretch a ton.
Yes.
And feel like your hamstrings are tight. But if we go any further, we can kind of start to see some movement of the pelvis. So we know that's not actually true movement. So, and then we just kind of come up into hip flexion here. We'll test a little internal rotation, not too great there. Yeah. And then we'll test a little external rotation. So we want a full 100 degrees between internal and external rotation. So we know we're definitely lacking a little bit of motion in the hips there.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And all that tells us is what's happening inside. How well can she? And this internal rotation is actually a lot worse than.
Yeah,
than
this is the
one.
knee that I initially injured.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I baby it.
Yeah.
So I should be able to go a little bit more to the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are some reasons why the left side. And this straight leg raise, you're actually really well there. So there's some reasons why, like, we kind of migrate to our right side anyway. And in bodybuilding, it's probably a good time to bring this up. In bodybuilding, everything is symmetrical, right? Like, you want everything to be symmetrical, so you work very hard for symmetry.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we're asymmetrical beings, and so some things you just can't work around, and so maybe you have one lat that's bigger than the other one, and a lot of that's just natural biology, and it's people grow one quad bigger than the other one, and it's easier for them to grow one quad or something like that, and all that's natural. That's just how our body was developed. We got more organs on our right side, not as much on the left.
Interesting.
So we're a little.
Did you know that?
We're a little heavier on the right side, so we tend to shift to the right side. So there's some brain stuff that goes into it, but So anyway, like with you, what we're looking for is we want to decrease some back pain, obviously, but we also know that we're missing some internal rotation. So we want to put you in a position where you have space to move into. So what that's going to be is just this hook lying position here, which is going to be great for you. And then I'm actually going to grab, what is this? This will work perfect. We're going to use this. So we're just going to slide this here, and you're going to squeeze it for me. So every muscle has two functions, right? So you do like the hip abductor exercise at the gym. So this is an adductor exercise, but because your femur's fixed, what happens is you actually end up opening up the pelvic outlet. And so the muscle works in reverse of the way you think it would work. And so with this, we can already see you don't do a good job of bringing your rib cage down. You're definitely a bodybuilder and a cheerleader, you live up here and up here.
Well, even our position on stage, you're supposed to take it and then you don't collapse. You just stay here and you breathe, and we learn how to breathe shallow in our chest, not in our stomach, because we don't want to deflate the stomach on stage. You're like, that's us.
Yeah, and so doing those for so many years, that's kind of the position you get stuck in. So we're going to try to recapture some internal rotation, especially in the left side. See what we can do here. So what I want you to do is you're going to squeeze this for me. I want you to feel your big toe and the inside part of your heel just on the table. Perfect. And then I want you to take a breath in through your nose for me. And as you breathe out, try to get all your air out. So imagine you're just emptying your lungs. Good. And you feel how your pelvis kind of wants to naturally tuck underneath you? So now take another breath in for me. Good. Breathe everything out. And this time you're going to actually tuck underneath for me just a little bit. Good. And hold right there. And breathe in for me. And breathe out. Good. And one more for me. Breathe in and breathe out. Very good. Relax for me. So we usually go through probably like 4 or 5 sets of that, but the more that we start to bring the diaphragm and rib cage down and the pelvic floor up, and we can stack those, as you felt, the more you can expand into your back, and you kind of start to feel like a little bit of a decompressive force on your back, like things are opening up a little bit.
Wow,
So
deep.
that's why the breath is so cool. And I mean, we did a few breaths, and we've got some more internal rotation here.
Wow.
We've got a nice little straight leg raise. Still got really good external rotation. And this is the one that, a little better. So not as
it is
not as
right,
bad.
because that was like didn't go nowhere at all.
Yeah. And so all it is recapturing relative movement kind of in the system. And like for you, like you got to be able to do certain things for your sport, but then also function, right? You don't want to go for a walk and feel your back, or wake up in the morning and not be able to turn your neck and do all that. And so
So in her case, what would the follow-up be? Like, she would keep on coming seeing you, or would she have to do some certain exercises?
So I give all my patients home exercises, because you have to keep your care going as you kind of like I can't be with you 24/7, unfortunately, and then it's just doing stuff like, let's say you do a heavy back day, right? And so we give you exercises to where we're like, hey, we're going to decompress your spine right after you do that. So we're going to give you exercises that allow you to expand into your back instead of being so compressed.
Okay.
And then I'm not big on like seeing people a ton. Like, I love my patients to death, but I realize they have a life and they want to do things. So I wouldn't say come see me, 2 times a week for the rest of your life. I usually like to get people in and out in anywhere from, 5 to 12 visits. And those are, the first time I see somebody, I'm like, come see me next week. We got some stuff we need to work on. And then, later on, I'm like, come see me in a month. You have plenty of exercises to work on. And so that way the patient becomes a little more proactive in terms of taking care of their own treatment. And it's not so much, hey, I hurt myself, you need to fix me, sort of deal.
Wow, that was really good. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for you being here, sharing your info with us, and letting us know about all these amazing things, and just getting the adjustment as well.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Riley Crandall, and good luck with everything. And you guys, see you next time in our next episode of FemFlex Friday.